You know what it feels like when your whole world gets ripped apart by the one person you die for? When the child you sacrificed everything for looks you dead in the eye and tries to murder you? Well, buckle up, because that's exactly what happened to me, and I'm about to tell you every gut-wrenching detail. The man in the suit leaned closer and whispered, "Don't touch that glass, it isn't safe." Those words still echo in my head like a death knell, because they saved my life from my own daughter's hands. Before we continue, hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know how far these stories reach, because what I'm about to share with you needs to be heard by every parent who thinks they know their children. My name is Tammy, I'm 65 years old, and I've spent every single day of the last 40 years building something from nothing. You want to know what sacrifice looks like? I'll paint you a picture. I started with one rundown motel on the outskirts of nowhere, working 18-hour days, scrubbing toilets with my bare hands, sleeping on a cot in the back office because I couldn't afford an apartment. My back ached, my hands bled, my dreams felt like they were slipping away with every passing year. But I had a reason to keep going. I had Sarah. My beautiful, brilliant daughter who deserved better than the poverty I grew up in. Every blister on my hands, every sleepless night, every missed meal was for her. I built an empire so she would never know what it felt like to go hungry, to wear second-hand clothes, to feel small in a world that only respects money. 40 years later, I own 12 luxury hotels across 3 states. 12. Do you understand what that represents? Decades of blood, sweat, and tears crystallized into success. And just last month, I sold it all for $37 million. $37 million. Can you imagine? I went from scrubbing floors to signing papers that made me richer than I ever dreamed possible. And you know what the first thing I thought was? Sarah. Always Sarah. Finally, I could give her everything she deserved. Finally, I could make sure she was set for life. That night should have been a celebration. It should have been the culmination of everything I'd worked for, the moment when all those years of sacrifice finally paid off. God, how naive I was. I chose the most elegant restaurant in the city for our celebration dinner. The Meridian, you know the one, with those deep burgundy velvet curtains that make you feel like royalty, where the piano music drifts through the air like silk and the champagne costs more per bottle than most people make in a week. Nothing was too good for my daughter. Nothing. When I walked in that night, my heart was soaring. I wore my best dress, midnight blue with pearls that had belonged to my mother, and I felt like I was floating on air. This was it. This was the moment I'd been working toward my entire adult life. The moment when I could finally tell Sarah that she never had to worry about money again, that everything I'd built was hers. Sarah was already there when I arrived, sitting at our reserved table with her husband Marcus. She looked stunning as always, that flowing auburn hair, those green eyes that sparkled like emeralds, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my first car. When she saw me, she stood up and embraced me, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. "Mom, you look absolutely radiant," she said, and her voice was warm honey. "Tonight is going to be incredible." Marcus stood too, flashing that charming smile that had won me over when Sarah first brought him home 3 years ago. Tall, handsome, successful in his own right as a pharmaceutical sales executive. They made such a beautiful couple, and I was so proud to call him my son-in-law. "Tammy, congratulations on the sale," he said, raising his champagne glass. "You've accomplished something truly remarkable." We sat down, ordered the finest wine, the most exquisite dishes. The conversation flowed as smoothly as the champagne, and I felt this overwhelming sense of completion. This was what I'd worked for. This was why every sacrifice had been worth it. "I want to make a toast," Sarah said, standing up again with her glass raised high. "To my incredible mother, who showed me that with enough determination and love, you can build anything. You've inspired me my entire life, and I'm so grateful for everything you've given me." My eyes filled with tears. This was perfect. This was everything I'd dreamed of. But then I noticed something. When Sarah mentioned the charity foundation I'd been talking about establishing, To help underprivileged children the way I wished someone had helped me. There was this flicker across her face. Just for a split second, her smile faltered, and something cold passed through her eyes. And Marcus? Marcus had this smirk. Not a smile, but a smirk. Like he knew something I didn't. Like he was enjoying some private joke at my expense. I tried to shake off the unease. This was supposed to be our night. Our celebration. I was probably just imagining things, right? I mean, this was Sarah, my baby girl, the person I loved more than life itself. But that feeling, that tiny needle of doubt, it kept pricking at the back of my mind. Halfway through dinner, my phone rang. It was Jessica, my lawyer, calling about some last-minute paperwork for the hotel sale. I excused myself and stepped outside to take the call. The night air was crisp, and I could see the city lights twinkling like stars. For a moment, I just stood there breathing it all in, thinking about how far I'd come. "Tammy, I just need you to sign one more document," Jessica said. "It can wait until tomorrow, but I wanted to give you a heads up." "Of course," I replied. "Thank you for everything, Jess. I couldn't have done this without you." When I returned to the table, something had changed. Sarah and Marcus immediately stopped talking, and there was this heavy silence that felt suffocating. They both looked up at me with these forced smiles, like actors who'd been caught breaking character. "Everything okay with the lawyer?" Sarah asked, but her voice sounded strained. "Just some final paperwork," I said, settling back into my chair. "Nothing important." I reached for my cranberry juice. I'd switched from wine because I was driving, and that's when I saw it. There was this strange residue swirling in the glass, like tiny particles that shouldn't have been there. The liquid looked cloudy, different from when I'd left it. My blood ran cold. Something was wrong. Very, very wrong. I set the glass down without taking a sip, my hands trembling slightly. Sarah was watching me intently, and when I didn't drink, I saw disappointment flash across her face. Not concern, disappointment. That's when I knew. In that moment, every maternal instinct I had started screaming danger. The woman sitting across from me, the daughter I'd devoted my life to, had done something to my drink. I made some excuse about being tired, about needing to head home early. Sarah protested, saying we hadn't finished celebrating, but I could see the panic in her eyes. She kept glancing at my untouched glass, and Marcus was shifting nervously in his seat. I hugged them goodbye, and Sarah's embrace felt like ice. As I walked toward my car, my mind was reeling. This couldn't be happening. This had to be some horrible misunderstanding. Sarah would never, she couldn't possibly. But then, as I was about to get into my car, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to see our waiter from the restaurant, a young man named David who'd been serving us all evening. He looked terrified, his face pale and his hands shaking. "Ma'am," he whispered, glancing around nervously. I need to tell you something. Please don't go home yet." My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. "What is it?" "I saw something tonight," he said, his voice barely audible. "When you stepped outside to take your phone call. I saw your daughter drop something into your drink. A white powder. She thought no one was watching, but I was clearing the table next to yours." The world tilted on its axis. Everything around me seemed to blur and spin. This couldn't be real. This had to be a nightmare. I saved the glass," David continued, pulling out a sealed plastic bag. "I didn't let them wash it. I thought you should know. I couldn't live with myself if something happened to you and I didn't say anything." I stared at that bag, at the glass inside it that contained evidence of my daughter's betrayal, and I felt something inside me break. Not just my heart, my entire understanding of reality, of family, of love itself. "Thank you," I managed to whisper, taking the bag with trembling hands. "Thank you for saving my life." I drove home in a daze, that bag sitting on my passenger seat like a bomb waiting to explode. Every time I looked at it, I felt this crushing weight in my chest, like I couldn't breathe. How do you process something like this? How do you accept that the person you love most in the world tried to murder you? I barely slept that night. I kept replaying every moment of the evening, looking for signs I'd missed, trying to understand how it had come to this. Sarah, my precious Sarah, the baby I'd rocked to sleep, the toddler who used to bring me dandelions and call them flowers, the teenager I'd stayed up all night with when she had her heart broken, that same person had tried to kill me. The next morning, I called a private laboratory. I couldn't trust the police yet. I needed to know for sure what I was dealing with. I needed proof that would hold up in court, evidence that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. We'll have the results by this afternoon, the lab technician told me. Full toxicology analysis. Those were the longest hours of my life. I sat in my living room, surrounded by photo albums filled with pictures of Sarah growing up, and I felt like I was mourning the death of my child. Because in a way, I was. The Sarah I thought I knew, the daughter I'd believed I was raising, apparently never existed. At 3 p.m., my phone rang. "Mrs. Thompson, we have your results," the lab technician said, and his voice was grave. The substance in the glass was digoxin, a cardiac medication. The concentration we found would have been lethal, especially for someone with your medical history. Digoxin. A heart medication that, in large doses, can cause cardiac arrest. And Sarah knew about my heart condition. She knew about the arrhythmia I'd been managing for the past 5 years. She knew exactly what would kill me, and she'd chosen her weapon accordingly. My own daughter had weaponized my vulnerability against me. She'd used my trust, my love, my medical condition as tools for murder. And for what? Money? The inheritance she would have gotten anyway? I called Jessica immediately. "Jess, I need to see you. Today. And I need you to contact Detective Martinez, the one who handled that fraud case for the hotel last year. Don't ask questions over the phone, just trust me. This is urgent." "Tammy, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "My daughter tried to kill me last night," I said, and saying the words out loud made them real in a way that nearly destroyed me. "I have proof." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Jessica's voice, sharp and professional, "I'll clear my schedule. Come in now." I could have called the police directly. I could have had Sarah arrested on the spot. But I needed to confront her first. I needed to look her in the eye and demand answers. I needed to understand how the child I'd sacrificed everything for could turn into someone capable of murder. The next day, Jessica arranged a meeting at her office. She told Sarah and Marcus that we needed to discuss the financial arrangements I'd mentioned at dinner, the charitable foundation and their roles in managing my estate. They arrived looking expectant, probably thinking they were about to get their hands on millions of dollars. God, the irony was sickening. I sat across from them in Jessica's conference room, watching their faces, still hoping against hope that there was some explanation, some misunderstanding that would make this all go away. Detective Martinez was waiting in the next room, ready to make arrests if necessary. "Before we discuss anything else," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "I need to show you something." I placed the toxicology report on the table between us. Sarah's eyes immediately went to the paper, and I watched the color drain from her face. Marcus tried to grab her hand, but she pulled away, her body going rigid with shock. "The waiter at the restaurant saw you put something in my drink," I continued, each word feeling like a knife cutting through my own heart. "He saved the glass. This report confirms that you tried to poison me with a lethal dose of digoxin." Sarah's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Marcus started to stand up, probably thinking about running, but I held up my hand. "Sit down," I said, and my voice carried an authority I didn't know I possessed. "You're going to explain to me why my own daughter tried to murder me." "Mom, this is insane," Sarah stammered. "I would never. I love you." "Don't," I snapped, and the rage that I'd been holding back finally erupted. "Don't you dare lie to me anymore. Don't you dare sit there and pretend you didn't drop poison into my drink while I was answering a phone call about the business I built for you. Marcus was sweating now, his face pale and clammy. Look, Mrs. Thompson, there's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, I cut him off, is how I raised a daughter who thinks murder is an acceptable way to get an inheritance. That's when Sarah broke. The facade crumbled, and I saw the person she really was underneath all the smiles and sweet words. Her face twisted with anger and resentment, and when she spoke, her voice was full of venom. You want to know why? She screamed. Because you always loved your precious legacy more than me. You promised me that everything would be mine someday, and then you started talking about giving it all away to strangers. To some charity foundation for kids you've never even met. The words hit me like physical blows. I built this for you, I whispered. Everything I did was for you. No. Sarah slammed her hand on the table. You built it for yourself. For your ego. You wanted to be the successful businesswoman, the philanthropist, the saint who saves the world. I was just an excuse, a justification for your ambition. I stared at my daughter, this stranger wearing Sarah's face, and I realized that she truly believed what she was saying. 40 years of sacrifice, of putting her needs before my own, of working myself to the bone so she could have a better life, and she saw it as selfishness. I gave you everything, I said, my voice breaking. I gave you private schools, college tuition, a house, a car, a wedding that cost more than most people make in 5 years. I gave you my entire life. You gave me things, Sarah spat. But you never gave me you. You were always working, always busy, always focused on the next hotel, the next deal, the next acquisition. And now, when you finally have enough money to last 10 lifetimes, you want to give it away to prove what a good person you are. Marcus was pulling at her arm, trying to get her to stop talking, but she was beyond caring now. The poison, and I'm not talking about the digoxin, was finally coming out. We need that money, she continued. Marcus's pharmaceutical company is going under. We have debts you couldn't imagine. We're about to lose everything, and you're sitting there talking about building schools for poor kids while your own daughter is drowning. So you decided to kill me? I asked, and my voice was barely a whisper. It would have looked like a heart attack, Marcus said quietly, his first admission of guilt. With your medical history, no one would have questioned it. You would have died peacefully, and Sarah would have inherited everything before you could give it all away. I looked at these two people, these strangers who had been planning my death while I was planning their future, and I felt something inside me die. Not just love, hope itself. Jessica, I called out, and my lawyer stepped back into the room with Detective Martinez behind her. You have two choices, I told Sarah and Marcus, my voice now cold as winter. Choice 1, Detective Martinez arrests you both right now for attempted murder. With the evidence we have, you'll both spend the rest of your lives in prison. Sarah started crying, but they were selfish tears, tears of self-pity rather than remorse. Choice 2, I continued, you sign a confession admitting what you did. You agree to leave the country within 30 days and never contact me again. You'll be monitored, and if you ever set foot in this state again, the confession goes to the police immediately. Mom, please, Sarah started, but I cut her off. I am not your mother anymore, I said, and saying those words felt like cutting out my own heart. A mother protects her children. A mother sacrifices for them. A mother loves them unconditionally. What you are is a stranger who tried to murder me for money. Marcus grabbed the confession and signed it immediately. Sarah hesitated, looking at me with those green eyes that used to melt my heart, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of the little girl I'd raised. I'm sorry, she whispered. No, you're not, I replied. You're sorry you got caught. If that waiter hadn't seen you, I'd be dead right now, and you'd be planning my funeral while counting your inheritance. She signed the paper with shaking hands. As they gathered their things to leave, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, no sense of justice served. I felt nothing but emptiness, a hollow void where my love for Sarah used to live. The person I loved most in this world died long before this day, I said as they reached the door. I just didn't know it yet. They left without looking back. Sarah didn't even turn around for one last goodbye. She just walked out of my life forever, and I sat there in that conference room feeling like my entire world had collapsed. The weeks that followed were the darkest of my life. I'd survived poverty, divorce, business failures, health scares, but nothing had prepared me for this. Nothing prepares you for the moment when you realize that the child you'd die for would kill you without hesitation. I threw myself into establishing the foundation. If Sarah thought I was giving away her inheritance to spite her, then fine, I'd give it all away. Every last penny would go to helping children who needed it, children who deserved better than the poverty I'd grown up in. The Tammy Thompson Foundation for Children's Welfare. It had a nice ring to it, don't you think? We started with emergency shelters for homeless kids, then expanded to include educational scholarships, medical assistance, and job training programs for young adults aging out of foster care. Every day, I met children who reminded me why I'd started working so hard in the first place. Kids who were grateful for a hot meal, a warm bed, a chance at education. Kids who appreciated kindness instead of taking it for granted. Kids who would never dream of hurting the people who helped them. It was these children who slowly began to heal the wound that Sarah had left in my heart. But life, as I've learned, has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. 3 months after Sarah left the country, I was at the foundation's main office when a young woman approached me. She was in her mid-20s, with auburn hair and green eyes that looked eerily familiar. "Mrs. Thompson," she said nervously. "My name is Emma Rodriguez. I'm a medical researcher at the university, and I've been following the work of your foundation. I was wondering if we could talk privately." Something about her seemed familiar, but I couldn't place it. We went into my office, and she sat down across from my desk, her hands trembling slightly. "What I'm about to tell you might come as a shock," she began. 26 years ago, your daughter Sarah gave birth to a baby girl. That baby was me." The world stopped spinning. I stared at this young woman, seeing Sarah's features but somehow softer, kinder, more genuine than they'd ever been on my own daughter's face. "Sarah was 17, Emma continued. She was scared, said she wasn't ready to be a mother. She gave me up for adoption through a private agency. My adoptive parents, the Rodriguezes, raised me with love and kindness, but they always told me the truth about my origins. I couldn't speak. I had a granddaughter. Sarah had had a baby and never told me. For 26 years, I'd had family I didn't even know existed. I've been researching my biological family for years," Emma said. "When I read about what happened with Sarah, the news made the papers when she left the country, I debated whether to reach out. But when I learned about your foundation, about the work you're doing for children, I knew I had to meet you." Tears were streaming down my face. "You're my granddaughter," I whispered. "If you'll have me," she said, and her voice was so full of hope it broke my heart all over again, but in a good way this time. I stood up and walked around the desk, and when I hugged Emma, it felt like coming home. She was warm and real and genuine in a way that Sarah had never been. She was the family I'd thought I'd lost forever. "Tell me everything," I said. "I want to know everything about you." Over the next few hours, Emma told me about her life. She'd been raised by loving parents who encouraged her education. She'd become a pediatric researcher, focusing on treatments for childhood diseases. She'd dedicated her life to helping others, just like I'd always hoped Sarah would do. "I want to help with the foundation," she said. "If you'll let me. I know we're strangers, but I feel this connection to the work you're doing. And honestly, I've always wondered what it would be like to have a grandmother. I've always wondered what it would be like to have a granddaughter who cared about something other than money," I replied, and we both laughed through our tears. Emma moved back to town within a month. She took a position at the local children's hospital and began working with the foundation part-time. For the first time since Sarah's betrayal, I felt hope again. I felt like I had family again. Working with Emma was like seeing what Sarah could have been if she'd chosen love over greed, compassion over selfishness. Emma had inherited her mother's intelligence and beauty, but none of her cruelty or entitlement. We spent hours talking about the foundation's future, about the programs we wanted to implement, about the children we could help. Emma had ideas I never would have thought of: mobile medical clinics for rural areas, scholarship programs specifically for kids from abusive homes, mentorship programs connecting successful adults with at-risk youth. "You know what I love about this work?" Emma said one day as we were visiting one of our shelters. "These kids remind me that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up for you, who fights for you, who believes in you when you can't believe in yourself." She was right. The children at our foundation had become my family in ways that Sarah never really had been. They appreciated every opportunity, every kindness, every chance to build better lives. They understood that love is a gift, not an entitlement. One year after that terrible night at the restaurant, Emma and I stood together at the grand opening of our newest facility, a residential home for children aging out of foster care. As I watched these young people celebrating their new beginning, their new chance at life, I realized something profound. The poison that was meant to end me became the spark for a greater purpose, I said to Emma as we watched a group of teenagers exploring their new bedrooms. "What do you mean?" she asked. "If Sarah hadn't tried to kill me, I might never have had the courage to give everything away. I might have held on to the money, hoping that someday she'd come back, that somehow we could fix what was broken between us. Her betrayal freed me to do something meaningful with my life." Emma squeezed my hand. "And if she hadn't given me up for adoption, I might never have found you when you needed family most." We stood there together, watching children who'd been thrown away by their families creating new bonds with each other, and I understood that sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the greatest blessings. I never heard from Sarah again. According to our investigators, she and Marcus moved to Argentina, where they lived quietly on a small allowance I provided through lawyers, enough to survive, but not enough to live the wealthy lifestyle they'd tried to kill me for. Sometimes I wondered if she ever thought about what she'd lost, if she ever regretted choosing money over family. But mostly, I focused on the family I'd found. Emma and I worked together every day, building something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. The foundation grew beyond anything I'd originally imagined, helping thousands of children across multiple states. And you know what the most amazing part was? Emma never asked for anything. She never hinted that she deserved an inheritance, never suggested that my money should go to her instead of the foundation. She worked for her salary, lived in a modest apartment, and found joy in the work itself rather than in what it might bring her financially. That's how I knew she was truly family. Not because of shared DNA, but because she shared my values, my compassion, my belief that we're put on this earth to help each other. 2 years later, Emma met a wonderful man named James, a teacher who worked with special needs children. Their wedding was small and beautiful, held in the garden of our main facility with 40 children from our programs serving as the wedding party. As I walked Emma down the aisle, I felt the kind of pride and love that I'd thought I'd lost forever. "Thank you for giving me the chance to have a real family," she whispered to me as I placed her hand in James's. "Thank you for showing me what real family looks like," I whispered back. The foundation continues to grow. We now operate in 7 states, with plans to expand nationally. Every year, we help thousands of children escape poverty, abuse, and neglect. Every year, we give young people the chances I wished I'd had at their age, the opportunities I'd tried to give Sarah but that she'd thrown away. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how things turned out with Sarah. Do I wish I'd handled things differently? Do I miss her? Here's the truth, I miss the daughter I thought I had, the Sarah I believed I was raising. But that person was apparently an illusion. The real Sarah, the one who could look at a lifetime of sacrifice and see only selfishness, the one who could poison her own mother for money, I don't miss her at all. What I've learned is that blood doesn't make a family. Love does. Loyalty does. Showing up for each other does. And by that definition, I have more family now than I ever had before. Emma, James, and the hundreds of children whose lives we've touched, they're my real family. The money I made from selling those hotels? It's almost gone now, given away to create futures for kids who deserved better than the hand life dealt them. And you know what? I've never been happier. I go to bed every night knowing that my life has meaning, that my legacy will be measured not in dollars but in lives changed, futures created, hope restored. Sarah thought she was taking everything from me when she put that poison in my glass. Instead, she freed me to become the person I was always meant to be. If this story moved you, if it made you think about what really matters in life, don't stop here. Click on the next video, it has a betrayal and twist you've never seen before. Because sometimes, the most painful experiences lead to the most beautiful transformations. Sometimes, losing everything means finding what you never knew you needed. And sometimes, the family you choose is so much better than the family you're born with. My name is Tammy Thompson, and this is my story of betrayal, survival, and the unexpected blessings that can come from the darkest moments of our lives. Remember, it's not what people do to you that defines you. It's what you choose to do next that determines who you really are.